I mean, I think perhaps the abuse linked in with the addiction, and the fact that the abuse fed into the addiction and fueled the addictions that I went through. I think that's probably the hardest thing to talk about, but I can talk about it. I can talk about it better now than I used to be able to. It's been a long time.
You see it a bit differently now than
before. I think you get to a point where I can talk about it like I'm talking about somebody else. So it's almost like I know it's me, and I know that was it was a different life, it was a different time, and that's not my life now, that's not who I am now. And I try to disassociate from that. Whether that's healthy or not, I don't know, but I've dealt with it. I've had therapy, I've had a lot of years to learn to cope with things that I've been through. So it is easier to talk about. There's one thing I always say, and I know that I think this is quite common, is that I often wish that I had somebody like the person I am now. I wish I had that person then. I wish I had that person to look up to and rely on then. That support, that network of help that I didn't have. I didn't have that, and there's not really much I can do to change that. There's nothing I can do to change any of it. So I don't wish things were any different, really, because I can't change it. There's nothing I could have done to change it, really, at the time. So no, I don't have any wishes like that. I don't have any regrets.
So what would you say to the younger you if you could go back and say something to yourself? What would you say?
There are better ways to cope. There are other services out there. There are ways to get through things that you don't have to depend on drugs, alcohol to cope with life. I wish I had somebody there to guide me and to teach me that, because that's all I ever knew. That was how I coped. That was how I got out of bed. That's how I went to work. That's how I did anything. I started taking drugs at a really young age. The alcohol came first. The smoking came first. We're talking, any form of addiction that I've battled with. I started smoking, I was like 10 years old when I started smoking, so I was crazy young. But I've been through quite a lot already by that age. I'd already experienced sexual abuse by the time I was that age, at school actually. And then I started smoking. By the time I got into secondary school, I was already drinking. I was already using alcohol as a coping mechanism. Home wasn't great, school was awful. So I was already at a point in my life, I was like age 11, 12, and I was already using different things to cope with just getting by every day. By the time I sort of hit 14, I then experienced quite a lot of terrible things. I was raped when I was 14 by a man. I was taken out by two men, and one of them raped me. And then at that point was when I became fully addicted to alcohol. I relied on it heavily to cope, to block things out. I used it to numb things, and I was smoking like 40 to 50 cigarettes a day, drinking alcohol all day. I'd drink at school, drink at home, and it was difficult, but it was never enough. Then I started smoking cannabis. I was probably about 15 when I started smoking cannabis. And then I left home really, really young, which didn't help. I left home when I was 15 and had a very unstable time where I was sort of sleeping between addresses on the sofa surfing. I was 18 by the time I got my own property. So I spent 3 years of not having a stable home, and sort of battling with that homelessness, and then unfortunately I was raped again when I was 16. That was in my mum's bedroom, which was really hard. I wasn't living at home at the time, but my mum had left me, and that's when it happened. And my mum found me, so that was I think that was probably one of the worst things I've ever been through. And that was, at that point, that was kind of a big switch, and I was drinking even more. I mean, I'd literally wake up in the morning and the first thing I'd do was start drinking and smoking cannabis, and then that wasn't enough anymore. So I started taking other drugs, and it just kind of snowballed, I think, from there, and it became my way of life until I was in my late 20s. So a long time. I didn't seek help until I was in my early 20s, around early to mid 20s. Yeah, I've taken a few overdoses in my time, but that one was pretty bad. An ambulance was called. I had a big seizure. I was unconscious for quite a long time. Yeah, it was a sort of a bit of a turning point, really. I'm not saying it was perfect. I didn't just wake up and go, well, that's it, it's done. You know, I battled for, a few years of therapy and being weaned off things and slowly doing it. You know, I was using methadone. I was slowly taking off things. But even now, I talk about it all the time. Even now, I have those moments where I feel really low, or I'm feeling really down, and I think that's the first thing my brain goes to, is that's what I need to cope. It's like muscle memory, I guess. You know, you automatically think, okay, well, that's how I used to cope. You know, it was easy. You know, I could just drink, pop some pills, or smoke, and it would work. It would work in the interim. Yeah. In the morning, I'm just going to give you a drug, and I found that really shameful. That was really sort of a driving force for me to stop everything. A lot of shame. I used to be so ashamed of talking about it. I never admit to it and hide it, and now I talk about it all the time. I've got nothing to be ashamed of. That was the life I lived. It was how I coped. You know, now I like to help other people that are going through that. So. Thousands, every month, helping thousands of people. You know, I'm a qualified psychologist. You know, I help people, give people mental health support, support people with addictions. I work with people every day who are battling addictions, whether that's a friendly chat or providing them with the tools and resources they need to improve their lives too, But lots of different people from various backgrounds, and I think it helps. I think when I I talk openly to them. I don't hide it. And I think it helps them to see that you've got that lived experience and you've been through it too. You've been where they are. And it helps them to know that they're not alone and that you're not there preaching to them and telling them what they should and shouldn't be doing. You understand how hard it is. I think that really helps. And you're never alone. You might feel like you're alone, but you're not. There is always somebody there. You might not think it at the time, because I didn't. I felt so alone. But there are services there. There are people that can help. There's genuinely people that care. And I know often it's hard to see that, isn't it, when you're caught up in all that. And I didn't think there was anybody to help me. But there was an amazing service that I attended many years ago, and it pulled me through. And the people I was around, they were really crucial in that, actually. You know, fighting that battle with other people, that often helps too. Being surrounded by others who are also struggling. I think knowing that you've helped others move forward from where you once were, I love that when I see people thriving, I see people doing well. That makes me so happy. That makes me really proud. And, you know, that could be somebody who's been homeless. I help people who are, you know, rough sleeping. It could be somebody who's been rough sleeping for a number of weeks and you finally got them a house and they can have a shower, they can eat, they can lay in a bed. That makes me really proud. It's nothing worse than seeing somebody struggle and know they've got nobody around to help them and you're it. But it does make me proud to know that I am that one that can help them and help push them forward. A little hand up, we always emphasise that, we're not a handout, we're a hand up. Help show people the way.
Do you remember the first time you actually made a call or went through the door of the place to get help? What happened? What was it like?
It was so scary because the other side of it was my family doctor and he ran the groups, and I just remember feeling so apprehensive and worried, thinking, oh my gosh, you know, this guy literally watched me grow up. You know, he was my doctor when I was a little girl, and I thought, oh gosh, he's going to be really judgmental and this is going to be really difficult. But he wasn't. He was so lovely and so supportive. It was hard. It was hardest, I think, sat in the group sessions. I found them the hardest. We had a room full of people sharing their stories about, you know, your troubles. That was really difficult. But it helps. It was very scary, but do it. I'll tell everyone, just do it. Yeah, it's scary at first. It's a little hard. If you feel, you know, like it will never help you. You feel like you're beyond that help, but you're not. You know, honestly, the volume of alcohol and drugs I was taking in a day, I promise you, anybody that's in that place, it is not impossible. It's not. I'm completely teetotal. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't take drugs, I don't do anything. I must sound really boring now. And just being with people that matter to me, yeah, surrounding myself with people that care, and keeping busy. And people often tell me I'm a workaholic. I don't get paid for the work I do. I'm a volunteer, just like most of my team. So everything I'm doing is entirely for the community. So I get up and go out every single day. It's tough. Some days are really hard, and I have days I've got people around me who I tell, you know, how easy it would be to slip back into that life again, and you're never free from that fight. It never goes away. It just gets easier. You just learn to cope and to manage it better. But it doesn't go away. Even 10 years on, I still get that urge. You know, when I'm having a really difficult time, and I think, gosh, how easy would it be to numb it like that? But I don't.
Is there anything that, if you think back to yourself as a girl, when things were really bad, is there anything that do you see yourself differently now? Do you believe different things about yourself than you did back then?
Yeah, I blamed myself for everything I ever went through, everything I ever experienced. I blamed myself. I assumed it was my fault. That's why people targeted me. It's that common, misconception that victims are in control to a point, and you make yourself a victim. I hear that quite a lot, people thinking that there's things that you could have done different to not be a victim. That's just simply not true. Perpetrators will always be perpetrators. It's never the fault of the victim. There's never anything you could have done differently to not be a victim. The only thing that could have been done different is then to not be a perpetrator. But I definitely now believe that I'm not the reason. It wasn't my fault. I wasn't in control. I didn't make those choices. But I did choose to take drugs. I did choose to abuse alcohol. But because that's the only reason, that's the only way I thought I could cope. But it's really not. It's not the only way. There's so much you can do to other people, to help other people, and that's. I think that's my job now. Is helping people, being there for others. I'm often told too much. I do too much for other people. But it's because I see the good in everyone, and I know to look past everything.
And how about looking after yourself? Do people remind you to take care of yourself?
Regularly.
What are some ways that you're trying to do that?
I know that people nag me a lot because I don't look after myself very well. I do neglect myself a lot. But I do try. But because I think because I'm so invested and so passionate, and I know I get caught up in it all because I know I've been there. And I don't want anyone to feel alone, and I think that is, maybe it becomes a bit overly invested. Because I just don't want to leave everybody to suffer or to manage their journey alone. Because I don't want anyone to feel the way that I felt. But I know it can sometimes be at the detriment to myself. Yes, my friends often nag me. I do give more time to my family, my children. My children are they're my everything. Yeah, they're what keep me going. I live for them. They need me. But I need me as well, I need to live for myself as well. I've got too much to do, too much to give. So, life is too short. Sitting down with people and finding out and unpicking things and finding out what's going on and seeing how we can help and look at the bigger picture. Take that time for people, make it more comfortable. Don't sit there with a little notepad and tick sheet and asking those general same questions, because everyone's different. You can't ask the same question to everybody. You can't talk to people the same. You can't. It's different. Everyone's different. You've got to be adaptable. You've got to be able to meet everybody's different needs. Everybody is different. And I think because we know that and we adapt to that, people seek comfort from that. And it's nice. Like you kind of like when you go to the doctors or the hospital, you feel like you're on a conveyor belt. Just another person that's gone in that door and come out the other side and probably been asked the same questions that they ask people on repeat all day, every day. And it's so clinical and there's no emotion attached, there's no empathy. And I'm not saying that other health professionals and other services don't try but they're so stringent in how they operate and how they do things that they're forgetting that these are actually people that they're helping. They aren't just a number on a bit of paper. These are real people with real experiences and real hardship. And I think if more people, more professionals, were more empathetic and more understanding, more compassionate, it would certainly make the world a nicer place to live in, I think. this conversation, we find it, I come up against so many blockers all the time when we're fighting for people that are rough sleeping, and I won't get onto that because that makes me so cross, how there's so many processes in place and procedures for getting people housed and off the streets, and there's different vulnerability factors that they take into consideration. That always confuses me. I think if you're on the streets, you're on sleeping rough, then you're vulnerable. That's just the end of really. But there's a scale that they measure it by, and that absolutely baffles me. That how anybody sleeping rough is just not considered automatically vulnerable, and then they'll stick to these legislations and these policies and procedures that they have in place. Fine, I get it. They've got to cover themselves, legally, but have a bit of humanity. Have a bit of come on, just look at these are people. Would you picture yourself in their shoes? What would you do if you were sleeping on the streets? Would you want somebody to say, "I'm sorry, you're not quite vulnerable enough. We can't do anything to help you"? Would you want your brother, your sister, your daughter, your son to be sleeping on the streets, knowing that there's nobody there to support them? Have some more compassion and understand that these are real people. They're important. We have so many organisations now that, as I mentioned it previously, that love to work with us and that see the work that we're doing and then love to then work alongside us. So they'll use one of my stores, the pantry, as a little hub to kind of meet people and see if they can help people with other things that we might not be able to help with. And we're working together, collaborating with other agencies to help people improve their lives, and that helps too. That joined up working, more professionals joining together and working as a team, but not just pushing people off to other services, not just signposting, which makes it sound like it's a really good thing, but it's not. People are constantly saying, well, you need to go speak to that person, speak to that person, speak to that. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. If you're going through a really difficult time, the last thing you're going to manage is constructing loads of emails and phone calls to people that you've then got to repeat your story to. But we take that away completely, and we do the storytelling for them. So they tell us once and once only, and then we tell the story. We share their story for them, and we break down that barrier for them and take away that pressure. And I think people like that too. I think that helps. There's a lot of signposting, which is lovely. But you're relying on someone who's already feeling extremely vulnerable, extremely overwhelmed. They're going to walk away and they're not going to make that phone call. If I can overcome things, I think anyone can overcome it. I've lived through so much crap, so much abuse and control and bullying. I've been in abusive relationships, and I've dealt with so much abuse in my life, and times where I didn't eat, times when I was struggling, and times where I didn't even know I was going to wake up the next day. And if I can overcome all of that, I think anybody can overcome anything. You really can. I've dealt with all of that, and I might not look it, but I also fight with a disability that I live with, that I've lived with since I was born. Fighting with a disability, mental health, addiction, abuse. So you throw all of that in, it's bloody hard. It's really hard. I'm not pretending that I wake up every day jolly and skipping down the street and that it's easy, because it's not. It's not easy. But it's better. It's better than what the alternative was. And life has got so much more to offer you. It really has. And there's so many beautiful things in the world. And beautiful people. There really is. And people need to see that.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Okay.
They really listen. We hear them. And we talk for them. We become their voice, because that's what they need. They need you to be a voice for them. And maybe speak a bit louder than they are, to be heard a little bit. in the right way.
Mm.
I don't think I did anyway, but never judge a book. Never think you know somebody or know something because you don't. And just keep an open mind. Really, honestly, I can't. It upsets me, and I don't know whether it's because I've been there, but it upsets me when people make silly comments like, you're faced with someone who's got an addiction and saying, well, why are you giving them food? If you don't give them food, that they might spend their money on food rather than their drugs or their alcohol. Like, no, they won't. No, they'll go hungry. They'll go hungry and they'll choose their addiction over the food. If I don't give them food, they will die. They won't eat. I don't understand that mentality. Why people feel that way. People judge too quickly. They think they know somebody. You just need to keep an open mind. Always tell people to keep an open mind, never judge anyone. Everyone's got a story to tell. They do. People think that they're of greater value to society than another person just because they don't have an addiction or they live in a nicer house or they've got more money. They automatically think that they can contribute more to society. That's not the case. I think sometimes it's the people without very much that have the most to give.
Yeah, thank you.
If I can overcome things, I think anyone can overcome it. I've lived through so much crap. So much abuse and control and bullying. I've been in abusive relationships and I've dealt with so much abuse in my life, and times where I didn't eat, times when I was struggling, and times where I didn't even know I was going to wake up the next day. And if I can overcome all of that, I think anybody can overcome anything. You really can. I've dealt with all of that, and I might not look it, but I also fight with a disability that I've lived with since I was born. Fighting with a disability, mental health, addiction, abuse. So you throw all of that in. It's bloody hard. It's really hard. And I'm not pretending that I wake up every day jolly and skipping down the street and that it's easy, because it's not. It's not easy. But it's better. It's better than what the alternative was. And life has got so much more to offer you. It really has. And there's so many beautiful things in the world. And beautiful people. There really is. And people need to see that.